Yeah.
Mic check. How
Hey,
about now? Mic check.
perfect. And we are live as well. So
All right.
it's I think Joe, you and I met last year through
Yes,
Peak,
sir.
right? And I honestly, the one thing I remember about the time we met, right, is you had this beautiful background of just this forest, and I always sort of refer to that every time we speak. I just have this image of you, this
Yeah.
beautiful background, and you were solving a and you are solving a very interesting problem in a very interesting way, which I don't think a lot of people have addressed. Like, everyone knows that, hey, buying committees are becoming bigger, and everyone knows that it's very difficult to sort of engage everyone. None of our buyer's journey or any of the marketing basics even it takes like the concept of buying journeys into account. Like, anything you've ever learned in MBA does not take that into account, right? And everyone is facing that problem, and it's just I don't know, it's just something that everyone just ignored,
Yeah.
or th- just left to deal with in their own ways. So
Right.
yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
I'm really
absolutely.
really excited to sort of just you know learn from you how you're sort of sharing or solving
Sure.
for this.
Yeah,
Awesome.
totally.
Maybe you can just quickly introduce yourself also. Yeah.
Yeah. So my name's Joe Hader, founder of Preframe, and I mean that's the intro. But on the note of trees and forest, I live in the forest essentially, about 2 hours north of Atlanta. And oh, he says pull the mic closer. Yes, I got it. We're trying to deal with some of these audio issues. Mic check. Mic check.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
So yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know about me. But the issue that you were speaking to, which is, just about everyone knows that there's a wide scale problem between sales and marketing, where there's this dynamic where marketing acquires the MQL, marketing lobs the MQL over a
Yeah.
fence, and now it's sales' problem. And
Yeah.
just about everyone knows that that dynamic is broken and it's not a good model. But for the longest time, we haven't really had any sort of inciting incident, any pressing need to shift out of that broken model. And that model was established during a previous time. This is Salesforce is just starting, and we have a buyer who doesn't necessarily go on a self guided journey. That whole model is based on a different kind of buyer. And of
Yeah.
course, now we have buyers who go through the process 60 to 70% the way through before they want to speak to a salesperson. So they're
Yeah.
very protected. The buying committee as a whole is extremely protected. And you may have one or two individual contributors who are tasked with
Hmm.
having to do the vendor evaluation process. And they may speak to a salesperson, but everyone else extremely protected. So we need
Yeah.
to, especially during this time where marketing has to justify its existence, and you have to say, yes, marketing is making an impact on revenue. Hey, this is the perfect time to address this broken system and
Yeah.
actually see what kind of role marketing can play in helping the buyer make an informed decision. And actually, there's so much that marketing can do at the bottom of funnel during the sales
Yeah.
process that
Hmm.
can immediately affect revenue.
Yeah, and I'll just maybe just tell a story that I just remembered, right? So my first internship that I did when I was back in college was for this large watch company, Titan, and I was tasked with finding a vendor who could essentially for scraping some websites. I'll not sort of go into the details because I shouldn't, but I had to sort of speak with multiple vendors, and my sort of job was to do that, make a PPT, and then give it to people who will make the decision. But I was the PPT maker essentially, right? So
Right.
if you think about it, anyone who I sort of put better information for would have won that deal. So in that case, anyone they speak with essentially has, like, they have lesser power than the intern in that case.
Right.
right? And for example, then even after I gave it to, let's say, the marketing team, or it was called a different team in that company, then let's say the finance director had a huge sort of say in, okay, what do we do or what do we not do, or like a
Right.
budget was pre-approved for that. So that
Yeah.
again was completely missed out. Like they never
Yeah.
knew these two people existed.
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's that's what they call a complex sale, where you have the figure I think is like anywhere between 4.5 decision makers. I don't know how you interact with half a decision maker, but it's the average. Um, so anywhere between maybe 4 and 7 different kinds of decision makers on the buying committee, and of course, as budgets have more scrutiny, you're gonna have deal scrutiny, where you have more and more people saying, "Wait, before we sign on to this contract, let's really weigh it into our current priorities." Everyone's feeling uncertain right now. So it's been a part of the process for years, but especially now. So I kind of think of it like if you ever had to order pizza as a group, say you have a large party at a house and you have to order a pizza or two, and it's difficult to get even friends to agree on toppings for a pizza, but this is like $100,000 pizza, and you have to get a bunch of people who aren't necessarily friends to agree on it. So it's a different kind of process than say like a transactional sale or a product led growth, where it's enter your email, download the product. It's that easy. Depending on what the solution is, if the solution does require that implementation, and it's not exactly a PLG led solution, then that's pretty much what they're running into.
Yeah, and I know I'm teasing the solution a bit, or the way you sort of solved it, but these decisions, even though there's a large buying committee, there's all this scrutiny, there are all these processes, are still very much emotion driven. So I do all the sales at Spear Growth till now, right? It's been over 2 years. I still do all our sales, and I know for a fact that a lot of companies sign with us because they like me. Like I know it. Like they like two agencies they couldn't decide between, so they said that, hey, I really like this guy, and I know we've won those deals because of that. So, and yeah, so in these cases as well, right? These are large deals, so that if you're able to make someone feel very special, that does increase the chances of your deal being won. So that's why I
Yeah.
love like the way you've approached this. Yeah.
Yeah. So uh, half of the phrase software as a service, half of that phrase is service. Of course, there's software, there's a product, but especially as revenue teams are looking towards retention, Sangram says retention is the new growth. So we have uh, the retention in so post sale, the implementation of the solution, and actually delivering on outcomes. That's what is going to help retain the customer. So and the buyer knows that too. They don't want to sign and they don't want to lock themselves into a contract for 2 to 3 years and then not get the results. That's kind of the biggest fear is, are we going to make a terrible decision? Am I going to lose my job because I just signed away like all this budget and now we're not going to even see the outcomes? And so a big part of that service aspect of software as a service is the team that you're working with. And so if you can help the buyer to feel, to your point, emotionally, hey, we're in good hands. I mean, if we like if they can get to the point where they're like, we've got vendor A, B, and C. Vendor B and C, they've got some features and maybe they have an edge on price, but vendor A, we know for a fact that they're going to be there for us and they're committed to our success. We know that as part of the service. And so if you're able to position yourself that way, then that's kind of exiting the commodities market, because price and features are no longer the top of the list. It's the confidence in the team. Hey, I think we're actually going to be able to deliver on these outcomes if we work with this team. And that's a strong market position.
Awesome. So I think now we can get into, so how Joe, how could, for example, any company do this on their own, right? Like for example, how do I, or maybe if there's levels to it, right? Like, hey, what does level one of solving this look like? What does level two look like? And then what is the, like the premium, or like how do you sort of do it at the largest scale or to the most efficient way? Like how does that look like?
Yeah, totally. So, um, essentially, my focus in terms of solving for this problem, and there's many ways to address the problem. Um, Historically, what you'd have is you'd give the A plus treatment to a named account. So you say we have this enterprise level deal. It's a must win account, and we're going to give it everything we've got. And so, like, imagine in the 90s or even before 2020, you'd say, let's get everyone on a plane and show up in the boardroom, shake some hands, sit down, have that conversation, and say, you know, yeah, you've been interfacing with this, maybe say like enterprise account executive, but here's some of our senior leadership. Here's the VP of customer success. Here's our subject matter expert. Here's our solutions engineer. So you'd get all of these important people from the team into the same room. And this really established that level of commitment, saying, we've got your back. This is our team, and this is at least the caliber of people you're going to be working with. And so that actually helps introducing those other members of the team that are not salespeople, helps to legitimize everything that the salesperson's been selling on. Because there's a little bit of an aspect where people know that a salesperson gets a commission and they have an axe to grind. They're trying to win the sale. But for these other people, they don't see a commission. So it's almost like this more neutral relationship. So that's kind of one of the tools in the toolbox for going all out on a named account.
Can you sort of show an example of this, that hey, something very real, that hey, the company sold to these like a service or a product like this is what the buying committee looked like, this is who from the company, they, when you bring that person in, it would have an impact. Like, can you just paint a picture of example here?
Yeah, so thinking of a specific example of when this would happen. So typically you'd have um, someone who's tasked with vendor evaluation, and they're the person who's actually who's actually interfacing with the salesperson. And then at a certain point in time, the salesperson is going to realize, hey, we need to multi-thread this deal. We need to loop in more people. I know you're not the only person. You're not going to sign off today, right? so, um, so they understand that they need to loop in more people into the deal, and so they'll say, typically when we and it all depends on the product, all depends on the service. And so the sales team is often very familiar with who's going to be involved in the buying committee. So they'll say something like, so typically whenever we're doing this kind of deal, we usually need sign off from finance, from procurement, from IT. And so they'll have a short list of who the typical buying committee is within a similar deal. And so that's a pretty manual process when the AE is interfacing with that individual contributor or other decision maker who's involved in the vendor evaluation process. But it does depend on the solution, and they'll typically have a short list.
Understood. Yeah. So yeah, please continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So the so that this is the the way that sales has been they've been tasked with this manual process. In the historical model, sales has had to do this in a very manual and unscalable way. And really, 2020, the pandemic has shifted the way that sales are done, where virtual selling, at least as some of these first touch points, maybe not the final meeting, but at least some of these first touch points,
Yeah.
both buyers and sellers are very comfortable doing this remotely.
Yeah.
And that really opens the door to being able to introduce those non sales team members into the conversation in a scalable way. So it's not the airplane into the boardroom. It's there's a video. So looking at sort of what would be the first step, and then what's the scalable version of the solution. So the first step would be introducing people who are not sales members of the sales team on a pre-recorded video that's then delivered through that champion or the mobilizer within the account. So uh, after like even after discovery, when you're able to identify, the salesperson's able to identify what are the pain points, what are the problems, what are they trying to solve for. You get a really clear picture of that, and then identify who is it on your team that can best speak to each one of those issues. And this could be solutions engineer. This could be someone on the executive team. Essentially, you want to just match who can speak to the issues best. And the lowest hanging fruit is to get everyone on a Zoom call and just go like round robin. Hey, let's talk about it. And since it's in an unscalable way, if this is not scalable yet, you can have these people address the account by name. Hey, account name, so honored that we're able to be a part of this, that you're considering us. So you can have that personalization, and that really drives the partnership aspect, the relationship. So it's really just like a Zoom call, 30 to 45 minutes to be able to capture everyone. And of course, because it's pre-recorded, if you make a mistake, you can stop. Hey, can we get another take of that? You kind of like messed it up. so so you give a little bit of post-production treatment, take out the when you fall on their face, like they fall on their face, take out the bloopers, and incorporate product shots. And so you really want to condense that down, even though you may actually put 30 or 45 minutes on the calendar. You want to condense that down to be as concise as possible, because this exported video is then going to be shared from the rep directly to the champion within the account, and then that person would be sharing that internally. So through email, through Slack, and then that video, especially if you can track the metrics of who's seeing it, it makes its way throughout the account, and they're likely to share it directly with those decision makers. And so this is a play where you're able to access those decision makers much earlier in the process. They're protected. And so this gives a way to have some FaceTime with your team early. And that's a huge help.
Understood. So this basically, sales teams, I think, do the, hey, let me introduce you, like a lot of sales team do the, hey, let me introduce you to person X in my company, especially for larger companies. But then I'm not sure how many sales team do the recorded version. uh, I'm not sure how many do a recorded and then an actually edited version. So that's what you're sort of proposing, that hey, maybe you could actually spend time uh, creating these videos with your team and then sharing them. And yeah.
Yeah, so it's absolutely, it's if we are able to focus on what the buyer wants, recognizing that they don't want to talk to a salesperson. So even the person who's been tasked to go through the vendor evaluation process, they don't want to talk to a salesperson. And the broader buying committee, they're largely inaccessible. They're very protected. And so the more that you can provide them a way to easily get on the same page without having to interact with your team, you're offering them a way to do this on their terms. And so yeah, I think that's really the future, where you're actually just recognizing the reality of it. We're not in the 90s anymore. This is the way that buyers like to go through the process, and so we're going to meet them where they are.
So this still leaves the fact that the non-sales folks, essentially who you are engaging with, they hate you. Now there was this entire marketing and sales misalignment. Now there's, if you always have to connect your CFO or your finance team, now they're like, really, like, again?
Right. I don't well I don't think it's a hate. I think it's
Yeah,
simply
but
they just don't trust. And like you can like a salesperson. You can say
no, I
this is
meant that
yeah.
it's not. I didn't mean that. So I mean, for
Yeah.
example, there's a sales and marketing misalignment within a company, right? That, hey, maybe that was there because marketing had a different priority, sales had different priorities, and they should have had the same priority. Now that the sales, let's say, is reliant on the finance team to then get them all of these recordings to then be able to close deals. Now they have to go and I say have to because it's required to increase close rates, to go and get more of these recordings to then try and increase close rates of the
Right.
deals.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah, so
now
there's
finance is a little annoyed that, hey, why do you need to come back to me again and again
right.
when I have all of my own work?
Totally. Yeah. And so this really exactly. So yeah, there's this, if you were to start adopting, and this is kind of one of those barriers to internally adopting this kind of workflow. Um, so this really gets to the the core of the issue. Like we would like to be able to deliver a buyer centric experience, except marketing gets measured on MQLs. And so in sales, you know, they have a way of doing this already. So why would, like, the whole organization isn't necessarily built to be able to provide their buyers a buyer centric experience. And to your point, these people who you have to get on camera to speak to these, they're busy with their real jobs. I mean, the higher you go internally, like senior leadership, getting them on camera, it's like it's a big commitment because they have to carve out time on their schedule, and it's only worth it for a named account. If you say, "Hey, we've got this deal, and this is the only way," if you're going to do it in an unscalable way, it's like, "Hey, we have this account, and it's like what, 500,000, 1 million. Drop everything that you're doing, and we need you over here." And it's like, well, we can justify that because the deal size is so large. So, and I think if you're going to do it manually in an unscalable way, it requires that level of deal size to be able to get them to get on their schedule.
How do you sort of solve that, right? Because that's not really a solution. That's like, hey, we can treat our larger accounts like this. How do you sort of expand something like this through to the entire sort of, or a
Right.
larger gambit of your SQLs, leads, prospects?
Totally. Totally. So, um, the unscalable method, which I just outlined, which is everyone drop everything that they're doing. We have this monster account. I still think that that unscalable method is worth it if the deal size is high enough. But if you go down to what, like a different market segment that's not named accounts, and it's, say, mid market, mid enterprise, and you have a higher volume, boy, there is no way you're going to get people to sit down and record 500 videos. So this is not going to happen. That's okay. So essentially, what you want to do is identify a market segment, like a clear use case, and a clear audience that you can speak to and speak their language. And this could be however it needs to be divided, by persona, by use case, by industry vertical, however you want to kind of segment the market. And then, whereas for that one-to-one unscalable method, we were tailoring everything very specific to that one account. For the market segment, you can make a list of topics, And it's like, hey, we always hear this from customers. We always hear this. We always hear that. And so you can have a short list of topics that you know for a fact are going to come up over and over and over again. And so that's going to take care of 90% of what you're going to need to produce. Take that list, put some time on the calendar with senior leadership, subject matter experts, get them to speak to the issues, and now you have a content library of all of those topics. And if you're able to, in post-production, isolate each one of those items as a standalone clip, then you're able to draw upon that content library on demand. So an opportunity shows up, we know they care about A, B, C, and D, then you can take those clips and bring them together, and they're at the ready where you don't have to ask for more time on camera. You already have the clip, so you're able to deliver it rapidly. And that's how you scale it.
This is really interesting. So who does this? For example, this is like the insights of the questions sales would have. This is part of sales enablement, which either you have a separate team for it or it's done by product marketing.
Right. Yeah. So
Who
it
does
should be,
this?
yeah, it should be collaborative. Sales typically isn't the one who's producing content. So, and it's gonna vary again based on the organization, but however sales content is being produced right now, same workflow. So you may have a sales leader puts in a request to maybe like a content manager, whatever that workflow looks like currently for, say, one pagers, any other sales collateral, same kind of thing. But yeah, it should be a collaborative effort where sales is always going to be the closest to the customer. They have that interface, and often marketing is like one step removed from those customer interactions. So really leading with the sales team's knowledge base, if they have call intelligence, so Gong or Chorus, they can make the list. They can identify what those topics are, and then also making sure that you get aligned. I mean, sales and marketing alignment is crucial no matter what you do. So make sure that you're aligned on what this looks like. How do you want to say it? And then yeah, it really depends on the organization's current workflow on building out sales content.
Or they could potentially work with you.
That's correct. So, and I don't want to plug too much, but this is
Yeah.
the service that we offer with Preframe. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's something that people can do if they have the resources in house. You could do it in house. So, and that's really my goal, is to get. I think this is the future. I think companies who recognize that marketing can help at the bottom of funnel so much.
Yeah.
So my goal really is to help people to pull this off in-house, because it's really like what marketing teams and sales teams need right now.
100%. So I was mapping out, like right before this today, I was mapping out the buying journey, and I was trying to make it as like as detailed as possible, and inside the sort of decision making stage. Right, when I was breaking it down, one of them was, and I think because we spoke, I've also added that, is that, hey, the buying committees is misaligned, and that is a stage that not a lot of companies even, that's a stage that not a lot of companies are addressing, at least the marketings are addressing, and this could be a very interesting way to do it. So yeah, like
Yeah. Yeah, that's
awesome.
probably the single greatest factor to a deal closing is that buying committee aligned? Do they have consensus? And this method, this play, is one tool that can allow the buying committee to get on the same page early.
Yeah, 100%. And so let's say if someone has any questions on, hey, I'm trying to do this, I'm not sure how to really pull it off. can they just sort of ping you and ask?
Yeah, just ping me. Yeah, yeah. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, so yeah, just ping me, and I'm here to help you.
Awesome. So if you're trying to do it yourself, ping Joe. If you want to just consider seeing if, hey, Joe could probably help you build this, ping Joe.
Yeah, ping Joe.
That could be like the CTO on your
That's our
website.
our official CTA, ping Joe.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. This has
Yeah,
been really
absolutely.
helpful in
Yeah,
just helping, even if like one more company does this, and that'll be so awesome. Like, because
yeah,
of this is one
and
more
it's
company doing it.
well, we're at a stage right. I mean, B2B kind of moves sort of slow. Almost no
Yeah.
one's doing it, so like
No
you can
worries.
gain a
Yeah.
competitive edge um, pretty easily. It's kind of absurd.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, after this, I'm thinking, hey, could we do it? Because we do make video ads.
Totally.
So this is how different is this?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the when it's applicable is when you have a complex sale. So if you see
Yeah.
that you have more than four decision makers on the buying committee that need to get on the same page,
Yeah.
this is a play that would be helpful.
Yeah. And even for example, in our case, this would be very helpful if some deals, for example, get deprioritized and then reprioritized. So a lot of the
Right.
conversations have been had. So now they don't want, so we don't repeat that stuff. But
Yep.
then someone is sort of saying something out of memory what they had heard 2 months ago. So
Right.
now they've said something which is not true. And we might lose a deal because of that.
Oh
So
wow.
there,
Yeah.
there this could be very helpful that, hey, everything we had discussed is there here. You can just, instead of you saying it, here's a 5-minute clip of me saying it
Yeah.
along with this other thing, or I can send it across with my proposal. So I'm just like thinking of different ways I can use
Yeah.
this, and I'm definitely DMing you to brainstorm more on this.
Yeah. There's a
I'm
lot
picking you up on your.
yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for doing this
Yeah,
again.
absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, if again, if anyone wants is sort of, if you're watching this either live on a video and you want to reach out to Joe, you probably have either link to his LinkedIn on in a description, in a comment, in somewhere, right? Just look down below and you'll find it. Yeah, and we'll see you maybe the next time. Awesome. Thank
Okay,
you.
cool. See ya.